Hey everyone, welcome to SF Beer Week and tonight's event, SF Landmarks Demystified with 4 Point Beer and Western Neighborhoods Project. We are incredibly psyched to have such an awesome crowd here tonight. Literally, we're gonna have over 200 people watching. We had to up our Zoom limit to get everybody in here. So thank you so much for joining us and supporting independent craft beer and local history. So a few housekeeping items before we begin. Everyone but our speakers here, who you've heard chatting, is muted in the live stream by default. But if you have a question or want to share anything, please use the chat function that's at the bottom of the screen and we'll get you into the conversation. Okay, I want to make sure that the chat function is working. So I want to do a little experiment. I have 2 questions. Number 1, have any of you ever attended a Beer Week event in the past? If so, please type the word beer into the chat. Feel free to use an exclamation point.
Whoa!
Oh my gosh.
Is it happening?
It's happening, Dina.
Very
Amazing.
much happening.
Okay. How about if you've come to an event with Western Neighborhoods Project, can you please type the word history?
Oh, that's longer and hard to spell.
It's also happening. It's happening.
Okay, so we got some Beer Week veterans. We have some history buffs. Awesome. Let's get the show on the road. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about Fort Point, who we are and what we do, and then we'll introduce our esteemed panel of History All-Stars that you see on the screen. My name is Dina. I am one of the owners and also the creative director at Fort Point Beer Company. And our brewery is right here. You see that blinking location marker? Beer is made here. We are actually one of the only breweries in the country that can claim that we're in a national park. We're in the Presidio right alongside Crissy Field, and we've been in business since January 2014. This is what it looks like inside the Brewery Warehouse. And this picture is from 2014 when we first started. And that year we brewed about 3,000 barrels. And this last year we brewed about 30,000. So we've really grown into the space. Our brewery is also steps away from our namesake, the historic Fort Point, which is something that historian John Martini is an expert in. Maybe we'll hear about it later. It's a fort at the base of the Golden Gate Bridge, and I personally consider it to be one of the most underrated landmarks in SF. If you know, you know. I'm sure many of you know. Hopefully you have your beers ready. Yes? Okay, so if you take a look at any of our beer cans, you might kind of recognize the historic fort that's part of our logo. It's on the bottom of every can. And each one of our cans is inspired by an experience in or around San Francisco. And that's why you'll find that there's a landmark or a neighborhood pictured on the can, which I'll talk to you a bit about today, the origin story of that. And we're extra lucky. We have a special treat because we're going to get to drink these beers while Western Neighborhood Projects and their panel of historians tells us the deep, dark, little known stories of these places we all love. I personally grew up in the Bay Area in San Rafael across the Golden Gate Bridge. I've lived in San Francisco for almost 2 decades, but I am ready to get schooled by this crew. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Nicole Meldahl and David Gallagher of Western Neighborhood Projects, who will tell you a bit about their work and the historians here today. Take it away, Nicole.
Yes, thank you, Dina, and of course, Sarah in the background and the whole Fort Point crew. I know we have a lot of Western Neighborhoods Project members in the house tonight. Thank you for your support. But let me give the elevator pitch for folks who maybe don't know who we are yet. So We are a nonprofit that's been preserving, interpreting, and sharing the history and culture of San Francisco's West Side since 1999. As Dina said, I am Nicole Meldahl, and I've been with WNP since 2012 when co-founders David Gallagher and Mr. Woody LaBounty took me in, gave me a history home, and really became my family. And then after years of joking that the organization would one day be mine, they were crazy enough to hand me the reins, and I've been executive director since the end of 2019, which is, a really great time to take over a community history nonprofit. But we still managed to do a ton of work despite 2020. And let's see, we have a podcast. We create history videos with our good friend Joey Yee. We provide educational resources to students and host rotating exhibitions in our Little Richmond District Gallery. We lead history walks, pub crawls, and we also provide cool lectures like this. So you can find information on all those things and more, and you can also donate and become a member at outsidelands.org. And yes, like the music festival, but we had the name first, and it's a really long story, so ask me about it later. But we do more than just that, and David's going to tell you about our Open SF history program now.
But David's muted.
Now, I'm new to this, right? I said Open SF History is a website and a collection of historical images that span the entire city. We started, I think, on like Thanksgiving Day 2015. Most of the pictures that we have on Open SF History come from one particular collector, but the site keeps growing. As you can see here, we have over 52,000 historical images online to date. And you can find pictures of your house. You can find pictures of downtown. And the pictures range from 1850 up to the 1990s. And I'm really proud of it. I built it from scratch, and it's become a great resource for historians and the public and everyone around the world who wants to know about San Francisco history and what it looked like. So
yes.
Check it out.
And some folks here are going to be using our photos tonight, and some folks here also helped us identify our photos tonight. So it's really a community effort. And our secret, the secret sauce to what we do, is that we really, really love what we do, and we love who we get to do it with. And that's why we invited some of our good friends to join us tonight, and I'll let them introduce themselves and or their organization. So take it away, Woody.
Hi, I'm Woody LaBounty from San Francisco Heritage. Our mission is to preserve and enhance San Francisco's unique architectural and cultural heritage. So think of us as the folks that try to keep vital and alive the places, the people, and the businesses that make San Francisco special. Jamie.
Hi. Oh, thanks, Woody.
Sorry.
Hi, I'm Jaime O'Keefe, and I'm born and raised in San Francisco. I'm the curator for the San Francisco Fire Department Museum and museum advisor for Guardians of the City. Guardians of the City is a nonprofit group dedicated to preserving and sharing the history of San Francisco's first responders. So that's the fire department, police department, sheriff's department, and emergency medical services. Okay, next up, Lisa, Ruth, and Chris.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Ruth Elliott, and with Chris Carlson, I co-direct and lead Shaping San Francisco. And so let's try this other thing that we did earlier. If anybody's been to our digital archive, foundsf.org, type foundsf in the chat box, and we'll see if there are people here who've been on that website. Awesome. We are a participatory community history project documenting overlooked stories of San Francisco's history. We see history as a creative act in the present. And Chris can tell you a little bit about the programs we do.
Yeah, we do walking tours, bicycle tours. We started Bay Cruises recently. We're also carrying on our public talk series outdoors during the COVID period. So we managed to keep ourselves afloat doing that with taking what we call walk and talks. So they're a bit abbreviated walking tours, but we get more chance to chat with each other along the way and stop and have sort of informal but intense conversations with local neighborhood people in locations that you normally wouldn't discover along San Francisco's hilltops and stairways and shorelines. So we really do want to explore the physical landscape of the city in situ, in the locations where it is, and then help peel back the layers of history in those spots. And we do that in a variety of ways.
All right, John, take it away.
Hi, I'm John Martini. I'm from San Francisco too. And I was lucky enough to spend 25 years of my life being a National Park Service ranger, mostly in my backyard at Golden Gate National Recreation Area. Worked at Fort Point, Alcatraz, the Marin Headlands. I finished as a museum curator at the Presidio of San Francisco. And I've been volunteering with Western Neighborhoods and Open SF History ever since I retired. It's a great organization. It lets me share my institutional knowledge of growing up in the city and helps me while away the pandemic, cataloging photographs with David and the other great crew. And to Dina.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. We are so psyched to be joined by this incredible panel of historians. Thank you to Western Neighborhoods Project and all of you for being here. So I think it's time. I know people have been asking, can we drink? Just a quick note before we get going. This is not a hazing event. You don't need to drink all 6 beers at once. You don't need to go in the order that we're going, color outside the lines, be you, do what you got to do. But personally, I'm going to be starting with one of our newest, most easy drinking beers, Sfizio Italian Pilsner. Okay, my favorite sound. Could you guys hear that?
Yes.
Cheers to you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. So
Try 'em.
Italian Pilsner, you might be thinking like, is this a take on Peroni? I've had Italian beers before, and this is actually quite different. Sfizio is inspired by a Pilsner that was made much more recently by a fairly new craft brewery in Italy called Birrificio Italiano, and please excuse my accent. Something that makes it different from a more traditional Pilsner is that it has this light, piney hoppiness to it, refreshingly so, I'd say. However, unlike a more traditional hoppy beer style like an IPA, Sfizio is brewed with old world European hops, which tend to be a bit more subtle and in some cases less bitter. So as soon as we at Fort Point decided that we wanted to explore Italian Pilsners and brew this style, there was little question about what SF neighborhood we would dedicate this can to. Obviously, it was North Beach. And that felt really perfect because Sfizio, which by the way, not only has SF in the name, get it? But it's also an Italian word that means indulgence or little treat. Sfizio, it's kind of like the perfect day drinking beer, and North Beach is the perfect day drinking neighborhood. So I want to take you all on a little journey. Like, imagine a day when you're walking through some of the skyscrapers downtown, heading northwest, and then you pass the Sentinel building and it really draws you in with its beautiful copper green facade and red awning. Are you guys seeing the color inspiration? And then you run into a friend. And so you sit down at an outdoor cafe for an Italian Pilsner and a snack. And then afterwards, because you've had a drink and maybe shouldn't be operating heavy machinery, you get whisked away by a stranger on a scooter who politely takes you to your next destination. That's what I know about a day in North Beach, a day of day drinking. The question is, what do I not know? What do we not know about North Beach?
I think we could write books about what we don't know about North Beach. But if you go to the next slide, I'll tell you what we do know about the Sentinel building, which is on the can. This is also been called in the past the Columbus Tower. It is an amazing flat iron building with a facade that's copper green mixed with the ceramic tile work. It's a bit under 100 feet tall with 7 floors and a cupola there at the top you can see. And it has a ground floor, which is where Cafe Zoetrope is, but underneath is this very large basement that I think a lot of people don't know about. And it's all at the triangular corner of Columbus, Kearney, Jackson, where the Sentinel building keeps watch at the meeting of the financial district, Chinatown, and North Beach. So let's look at the next slide. I'll tell you a little bit more about its history. It's city landmark number 33. By the way, I started with the Sfizio, which I think is fine. I'm also very happy to go first because this will not be the only beer I have. Okay, it dates from the early 20th century. It's city landmark number 33. And this is a picture from 1906. You can see the 1906 earthquake and fire has destroyed everything. And it looks like the Sentinel building there on the left is one of them. But actually, it was under construction at the time of the earthquake and fire. And the architectural firm of Saulfield and Kohlberg, who designed it, gave it a steel frame, and it held up pretty well through the fire and was completed fairly quickly after the earthquake. The building has amazing affiliations with lots of San Francisco history. You can see on the bottom of this photo, maybe you can, it says Abe Roof Building 1910. Roof is misspelled. Abe Roof was an attorney and a real estate broker who was also the corrupt city boss, the political boss at City Hall in the years before the 1906 earthquake. After the earthquake, in the corruption trials, the graft trials that were trying to root out government corruption, he was the only one who served any time in prison because of it. He had his offices here in the Sentinel building where he could oversee what was then called the Barbary Coast. And that was streets full of dance halls and gambling dens and other sundry rackets. Through the years, the small offices of the Sentinel building have held real estate firms, piano tuners, barbers, dentists, but the ground floor and the cavernous basement level have always been home to restaurants, cafes, and clubs. Early ones included Caesar's Grill and Neptune's Grotto. Post-World War II, there was a Zim's coffee shop, one of many in a local chain of coffee shops. Some of you might remember Zim's, that filled where the Cafe Zoetrope is today. But perhaps the most famous business in the building was the Hungry Eye. Yeah. The Sentinel's 3,000 square foot basement was the first location of this bohemian nightclub where entertainers like Joan Rivers and Bill Cosby, Barbra Streisand, and the Kingston Trio all got their starts in the early days. The Kingston Trio actually later bought the Sentinel building and used offices upstairs to run their business while having a recording studio set up in the basement for them and other musicians. When the Sentinel was designated a city landmark in the early 1970s, its copper cladding had deteriorated and a battleship gray paint job covered the building. But I remember very well, you can see on the right here, the psychedelic advertisement for Marine World, an amusement park, which was on the flat side there. It was like me, that's the way I understood the hippies, was this ad for Marine World that I used to see all the time in the Sentinel building. And you might note that the Zim's coffee shop sign on the bottom on the right picture has been hacked to read Jim's. Obviously, Zim's has moved on. I don't know what happened with that Pagoda restaurant there on the left. Francis Ford Coppola bought the building in 1972 and is responsible for the restoration of the building as we see it today. American Zoetrope Film Studio, which he started with George Lucas, reputedly used parts of the building for some of their different productions, including one story in which Martin Sheen did all the voiceovers of Apocalypse Now inside the Sentinel building. So naturally, such a visually striking and historic building has many stories about it. And one is that Harrison Ford was working as a carpenter doing small jobs on Coppola's office when he was discovered by George Lucas. This is not true. While Harrison Ford did work as a carpenter when he was a young actor, he did not get discovered in the Sentinel building. There's another story, which if you hit the button, yeah, which is that in Caesar's Grill on the ground floor, that's where the Caesar salad was invented. This is not true either. but it's a good story. And I kind of feel like if you want to make up your own myth about a building, the Sentinel is such a romantic and mystical looking building. Go ahead. I mean, let's make up these new stories for later historians to find and debunk.
That's great.
Wait, I got one more. What I just want to say real quick, what isn't a myth is that this building is one of the most iconic in San Francisco, notable for its architecture and its history. And I think you're right, Dean. I think Cafe Zoetrope is the perfect place where you pull up in your Vesta or your Vespa and you have a Sfizio. So
That's the alternative pronunciation. Very
okay,
good.
there we go.
No, that was great.
That's it.
My mind is reeling with myths. I'll have to get back to it.
Make up a myth. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I know we're just getting started. I assume you guys haven't finished the Sfizio yet, but I'm moving on. And this is a bit stronger. We're gonna keep our route right geographically. And then the next spot we have is Telegraph Hill, which is ref by Animal. So let's cheers with an Animal IPA. You have no idea whether I finished the Sfizio myself. I guess you'll see towards the end of the event based on how clear my speaking is. So Animal was the second IPA we ever canned, and it's kind of a counterpoint to Villager IPA, which we'll check out a little later. And true to its name, Animal is really bold. It's still very balanced, but it's got a lot of flavor, tropical flavor in particular, because it's brewed with tropical hops, which are typically found in the Southern Hemisphere and lend the beer notes of mango, passion fruit, and citrus. I'm going to test that out. I'm totally getting it. When we first started brewing a Boulder IPA, we knew that we wanted to name it Animal. But when it came time to design the package, we made a list of animals that we considered kind of local to San Francisco that we'd have on a can. I don't know if you guys have any guesses as to what animals we were thinking of before we settled on the parrots. There were bison, obviously, coyotes, seals.
Raccoons.
Yeah, my favorite was raccoons. Yes. And we literally actually tried all of them out. And I was excited about the raccoons because I was living in Hayes Valley at the time. And they were kind of everywhere, kind of like my outdoor cats of sorts. But the problem was when we designed the can and it said tropical IPA under a picture of a raccoon, it just kind of didn't quite work. So we were having a really hard time. We're like, what's a tropical animal in Northern California? It's just like not a thing. And then we had this realization, which couldn't be more obvious in hindsight. We have these amazing parrots of Telegraph Hill that, you know, fly all over the city. I live in the Sunset now and I see them all the time. So then everything just fell into place. So on the can, we got the flock of parrots, or a pandemonium, if you're a stickler for words. We have Lombard Street, which is adjacent to Telegraph Hill. And then we have the marker of Telegraph Hill, Coit Tower. Jaime, school us.
Hi, so yes, this is Coit Tower. It's San Francisco landmark 165. It's at the top of Telegraph Hill near North Beach. It's over 200 feet tall and made of white concrete. It was designed by Arthur Brown Jr., the same architect who designed our City Hall and Opera House. It opened to the public in 1933. Next slide, please. The interior of the tower contains over 25 amazingly detailed painted murals on its walls, depicting aspects of life in California in 1934. Showing scenes of California life during the Great Depression. The murals were commissioned as part of the Public Works of Art project, a precursor to the Works Progress Administration, or WPA. Some of the murals were controversial when they were first painted because they included communist symbols. These parts were painted over before they were made viewable to the public in 1934. Here are just two examples of the murals. In the one on the left called City Life, life in the city doesn't look so great. You can see there's a car accident in the middle background and a guy getting mugged in the front. The other mural called California depicts an idyllic scene of agricultural labor and the harvesting of fruits and flowers. So right now, the tower is closed due to COVID restrictions, but it's usually open to the public and you can take guided tours of the interior murals. From its observation deck, visitors have a 360-degree view of the city and San Francisco Bay and both the Golden Gate and Bay Bridges. So you may have heard that Coit Tower was built to look like a fire hose nozzle. That's not true. But why would people say that in the first place? Who was Coit anyways? Would you have guessed Coit was a woman? Next slide, please. So this is Lily Hitchcock Coit. She was born in 1843 in West Point, New York, where her dad was an army doctor. Her family was wealthy and came to San Francisco in 1851. According to legend, as a young girl of about 8, Lily became fascinated with San Francisco's volunteer fire department after she was rescued from a fire that killed 2 of her friends. Next slide, please. As the story goes, when she was about 15 years old, she saw the firefighters of Knickerbocker Engine Company number 5 responding to a fire. This was at a time when fire engines looked like this, and fire engines and fire trucks were pulled by hand by firemen using long tow ropes and not by horses. Lily saw they needed help, so she jumped in, grabbed the tow rope alongside the men, and helped them pull the engine. The Knickerbockers were impressed by her dedication and eventually adopted Lily as a sort of mascot. When she was 20, they made her an honorary member of their engine company. This was during the time that San Francisco's fire department was made up of volunteers, and there are no records of any other woman being given this type of honor. She was allowed to wear a version of a firefighter's uniform, including a red shirt, black skirt, and a fire helmet with a front piece that included her own initials, and always, always a gold badge featuring the number 5. You can see this badge in formal paintings of Lily too. She also added a number 5 to her signature and had 5 sewn into her linens. She was known to ride on top of Knickerbocker engine in parades, and she attended firefighter events and banquets. Known as Firebell Lil, she smoked cigars, dressed like a man, gambled, played poker during a time when this was not proper for a woman of her social standing. As a wealthy person, she got away with this kind of behavior, but she was always generous and also cared for sick firemen and helped pay for their burials if their families couldn't afford it. She ended up marrying a wealthy stockbroker, not a firefighter, named Howard Coit. And after her marriage, Lily traveled the world, meeting Napoleon III as well as the Maharaja of India. She was overseas at the time of the 1906 earthquake and fire and returned in 1924 to a very different San Francisco. Next slide, please. Lily passed away in 1929 at the age of 86. For years, she had been generous to the children and widows of firemen. She left 1/3 of her money, about $118,000, to the city of San Francisco for the purpose of adding to the beauty of the city, which she had always loved. The money from her estate was used to construct Coit Tower on Telegraph Hill, which was built after her death, but she also funded the Veteran Firemen's Memorial Statue that's still in Washington Square in North Beach, and the Hitchcock Lecture Series at UC Berkeley named after her parents, which are free lectures about practical and scientific subjects. At the San Francisco Fire Department Museum, we have Lily's helmet, her fire department membership certificate, and some of her other personal items like one of her tablecloths on display. And we'll hope you come visit the museum when we can open again.
Thank you, Jaime. I've been to Coit Tower, but I've never been to the museum, and I'm looking forward to checking it out.
I'm happy to give you a tour.
Jaime, there's a request for Lily Coit merchandise, namely t-shirts.
We have pins. We have Lily Coit pins that are for sale at the museum, but since the museum's closed right now, you'll have to contact me directly. I can make it happen.
And is that Lily Coit behind you?
It is. It's a reproduction of a painting that we have in the museum. And I have it usually in my front room.
Yeah, it was the first thing I noticed when Jaime got on the call. I was like, wow, you really embody this woman. So
I like Lily.
How are the beers going for everybody? I'm starting to feel them a little bit, animal.
I'm gonna head to the liquor store. I'll be back.
Hey, we shipped you some beer.
I know, and it came in like 8 minutes.
That wasn't a planned commercial, guys, but it's
How
true.
cool
I mean,
was that? That was totally amazing. I think we were all amazed that once we got our ticket, we got the beer like before we could get out of our chair. It was amazing.
I'm not going to promise 8 minutes, but an hour, less than an hour at least. We're going to continue our IPA tour. I know I promised everybody Villager, and here we are. So we're traveling from one tower to another onto Sutra Tower, and Villager is our San Francisco style IPA. Full disclosure, we made that style up. Or more officially, you could say we coined the style because there are a few breweries that are making it today. So Villager, it's a bit more floral and mild than Animal. I'm gonna take a sip. It pairs really nicely with a meal, and it also has kind of a more traditional bitter hoppiness, like a typical West Coast IPA. It was the very first IPA that we made at Fort Point, and we really wanted to dedicate it to the people of SF. Our city, it's a city of neighborhoods. Sometimes I joke, I call them villages, and so in a way, we're all villagers. You guys with me for this? Okay.
Yes.
So on the can, you'll see houses lining up the hill towards one landmark in particular, and that's Sutra Tower. And Sutra Tower just kind of felt like a very local landmark in SF. You can see it from different vantage points across the city and many different neighborhoods. I kind of sometimes think of it as the moon in some ways, and I bet some of you are looking at it right now. But of course, it wasn't always there. David, what did a San Francisco without a Sutra Tower look like? And how did this tower come to be? Tell us.
Yeah, well, as you said, it's right there in the middle. Pretty much, it's something that everyone can see. It's right. Essentially, it's in the center, very center of San Francisco. It's the tallest thing. But who was Sutro? Let's go back. Who was Sutro? Sutro was a rich guy who owned large swaths of San Francisco. He had a house at Sutra that he called Sutra Heights. He had a monkey. That's a monkey on the right. You can go ahead now. Move next slide.
Not a raccoon.
He had a horse. He had the most awesome sideburns ever in San Francisco history, I believe. As I mean, I don't think there's anyone to compare. He was also a very strong populist. He ran for mayor of San Francisco and won. He was mayor. He took on the Southern Pacific Railroad. Yeah, the octopus must be destroyed was his slogan. He opened his grounds, his estate at Sutra Heights to the public. So he was a man of the people, really. So that's who Adolf Sutro was. He also owned huge amounts of the city of San Francisco on the west side, including a large hill right in the middle, which was once called Blue Mountain. We call it today Sutra Heights.
No.
No, we call it
Mount Sutra. We call it today Mount Sutra. I'm telling you, it's like the 6.8 beer is getting to me already. I'm only halfway through it. So in the 30s, his grandson built a beautiful home on the top of Mount Sutra. He called it La Avanzada. If you ever go up there, there's a street called La Avanzada Street. And if you know Sutra Heights, you know there are a couple of lions out front. So Adolf G. Sutro, his grandson, put a couple lions in front of his house. But like a lot of rich people, they grew weary of their eyrie on the hill and sold it to the new medium of television, sold it to Channel 7, KGO TV, and Channel 7 used the house as its studio and built Sutra Tower next to it. Not the same Sutra Tower, but an earlier one. In the 50s, they realized that it wasn't good enough. They were going to have to build something bigger. And finally, in the early 70s, 1972, 1973, the Sutra Tower that we know today started to be constructed on the site of that house. Next slide. And as we said, you can pretty much see it from anywhere around the city. And I didn't read all the notes, as you can, it's no surprise that I didn't read the notes, but the finish to this, to me, was realizing that Villager really was about Sutra Tower, about how Sutra Tower is visible from anywhere in the city and really in the Bay Area. And it's kind of it's really a lingua franca for all of us, and something that we hold to get, that holds us together as San Franciscans and as Bay Areans.
But David,
Bay Areans, yeah, no.
David,
Yeah.
what does it do?
What does it do? Well, so back, it's a TV broadcast tower. So pretty much radio and TV and everything. I remember in 1973, I was 10 years old, and we would see TV commercials that said the tower is on. And that meant that we could finally get Channel 7 because it had broadcast from this small tower on Mount Sutro, and you couldn't get it in where I grew up in San Bruno. But really the iconic nature of the tower and the fact that we can all see it and it binds us together is something that has really surprised a lot of people. It was widely vilified at the time as an eyesore, but now I'd say that Sutra Tower is well beloved based on how many kinds of Sutra Tower products you can get, and how many people actually have Sutra Tower tattoos. If you have a Sutra Tower tattoo, type tattoo in the chat. Or if you're going to get one, I don't know. Or maybe if you're going to grow big sideburns like Adolf Sutro. But we have a couple.
Oh, there's one.
They're popping in there.
Oh,
sideburns. We have some aspirational sideburns growers there. So that is the name. That is why Sutra Tower is named Sutra Tower.
I'm glad I went first. I really am.
David, that was very cool. That's why I put this cool slide up.
Yeah. Hey, panelists, this is some insider baseball, but we're all ahead of schedule, which no one predicted for this event.
Whoa, we got to drink slower.
I think it'll slow down.
I'll lead up the clock.
I was promised that there would be more heckling.
Look, we've got a few beers in us now, so it should speed up the heckling process.
I think we're supposed to have
getting harder to operate.
A mid-talk. We're supposed to have a mid-talk toast, it says. So we're supposed to,
that's great.
Let's toast to better presentations.
No, great.
I will accept that veiled criticism, Woody.
Let's toast to everybody who showed up for local beer and local history. Salute.
Absolutely, yes. Also, if you guys enjoyed that bit with David, I've personally been binging the podcast that Nicole and David produced together. So there's a lot more of that. You can have it at your fingertips anytime. It's called Outside Lands, right?
Outside Lands San Francisco podcast of the Western Neighborhoods Project.
And I'm John Martini.
John's on it too.
And there's over 400 episodes you can listen to.
And there are always children cheering and clapping in the background.
They're not actually trapped in our computer. They're just, okay, maybe I should not talk anymore.
They're live, those kids.
Okay.
I love this cool design I see here. This is awesome.
Do you like it? Yeah, it's very cool, they say. Yeah, this was before we started the presentation. We decided we would all do that dance when somebody needed to move the conversation along. It's our secret signal,
And
letting
Dina
everybody in on
It
it.
was
Dina
secret.
told me not to use the word cool when I'm talking. In fact, I have a sticky note.
Yeah,
Get
there's
Cal, if you use the word cool and it's not your can, we've got our can coming up.
Right.
I like Dina. Somebody asked a question. What is our favorite SF landmark that we don't already? That's not already a
Oh,
4-point
man.
beer label. You know, I was thinking about this, and I kind of feel like there might be some. It's hard. There's no physical landmark that's real obvious, but I do think that the American Indian Cultural District and the Mission District has made me think a lot more about trying to honor and find ways to call out the local native history.
Mhm.
Because, you know, we all kind of start with San Francisco, but there's, you know, thousands of years of history before. So some kind of design to work with the American Indian population in the city, I think would be cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. We'll have to chat more about what that could be if you have ideas. Nicole, it looked like you had a really strong reaction to that question.
Oh, well, someone in the chat was like Trocadero. We've got a Parkside contingent in the audience tonight, which is great. But yeah, Trocadero, put that, or you know, if you really want a raccoon, you know, just Alcatraz and put a raccoon on that can as the little burglars, you know.
Shout out, I know that Tanner is in the audience. Tanner is one of the designers that works on our cans, and we've had a few iterations of cans with Alcatraz kind of far out in the distance, but we haven't really made it a star yet.
Maybe we can get a WNP can featuring something on the
Oh,
west side.
yeah, maybe you can. We'll have to talk about what kind of beer you guys like. I know Woody likes dark stuff, but maybe there's a collab in the works. I see somebody saying Golden Gate Park. We have our park can dedicated to the park. And yeah, raccoons are very popular. The Presidio, yeah, sometimes depending on who's telling the story, we say that these are the Presidio houses because that is where the brewery is. But, you know, and this is Fort Point, but we could be a bit more obvious. Okay, are we ready for cool?
I think we are.
That sound again. Okay, so continuing on with the IPAs, Cool is the newest IPA that we've made, and we've released it just last year. And this beer is undeniably cool, as we've discussed, as is anybody who holds the can. But it actually gets its name from the fact that it's cold fermented. And cold fermentation is typically a process used for lagers, which is a style of beer known for its really clean flavor profile. Think Bud, Tecate. There are also lots of really great craft lagers. With Cool, we created a West Coast IPA recipe and then fermented the beer at a cooler temperature, the way we would with a lager, which created a clean and focused hoppy flavor that's a lot lighter and crisper than maybe a typical IPA. Very like focused and sharp in a nice way. So you can kind of think of this beer as a different approach to a really popular beer style. And if you're looking closely at the graphic, you might notice that it's a bit different than the others. There isn't really a specific landmark associated with Cool. It's more just a San Francisco scene. And cool is hard to define, you know, cool is a feeling. One you might have when you're walking through your neighborhood, finding a secret stair that you didn't know about before, or cycling from one end of the city to another. And, you know, it's very cool if you know how to do that and avoid all the hills. I'm regularly on the wiggle, but still ramping up my knowledge to get across the whole city by bike. But lucky for us, there are a few people here today that know a thing or two about cycling and cycling routes in SF. So I'm passing the baton on to cool Lisa Ruth.
Yeah, well, this can does exude cool. And we're really proud to have cool as our can because we're the cool kids of history here at Shaping San Francisco. You know, most Americans think it's cool to have a car, and there's all kinds of car commercials telling you all of that all the time. But you know what's really cool? Riding your bike around town. There's a myth about San Francisco that the hills here make it impossible, but urban cyclists know the secret routes along the edges of the hills and along the terrain that get them where they need to go. A sort of variation, if you will, on the many snaking staircases tucked away in our neighborhoods that Dina mentioned. So a variation on this is, for bikes, the wiggle, which is featured on this can, cutting through early paths that predate our urban center. So check out this 1860s photo of the portion of the wiggle that winds through the lower Haight. And this was once known as the Sans Souci Valley. There's no assistance provided by a cable car needed here. Also, you know, it's been cool to ride a bike since the last decades of the 1800s, when the bicycle became an object of pleasure and a symbol of progress to Americans. Enthusiasts hailed it as a democratizing force for good, the silent steed of steel, the modern horse. So I guess Sutro needed the modern version of his horse there, David. The Gilded Age was the bicycle age, and millions of new bicyclists demanded good roads to accompany their embrace of this newfound means of transportation. You can also see that it turns heads. There's that lady looking back at those folks on their cycles. And on Saturday night, July 25th, 1896, after months of organizing by cyclists and good roads advocates, residents cycled the streets of San Francisco, massing up in the streets inspired by the possibilities of the bicycle.
Did you know that when you ride San Francisco's streets, it's like a divining rod to where the water lies under the surface? Once covered with wetlands, as you see here in this picture, and marshes, sand dunes, and valleys, where water pooled seasonally, as shown in the freshwater marsh photo, when you're riding down an incline, you're heading towards the water. And when you're riding up an incline, you're riding away from it. We also have an overlay. Next slide, please. On the next slide, you see a Google map done in around 2005 or so. So you see Mission Bay is not very built out yet. But this is a map done by Christopher Richard of the Oakland Museum. He's now retired. And it shows a very accurate picture of where all the waterways were in the original shoreline all around Mission Bay. Because Mission Bay, which is now, of course, the campus of UCSF and massive amount of offices and condos, once was all water. And you can see a deep water channel going in right around 8th and Townsend and all the way into the heart of the Mission District, showing how much of both the Mission District and the South of Market are built over wetlands and marshes, which is why you can nowadays ride your bike through those neighborhoods and find many places, especially in these areas that you see indicated here, where buildings are tipping and sliding and sinking once again into the marshlands.
So yeah, this map is available. If you go to Found SF and you look up vanished waters, you can check that out. I just want to respond to that chat comment. So did you know, in the next slide, that there is a wiggle within the wiggle? There on the left, you can see Mona Caron's collaborative mural with the San Francisco Bicycle Coalition from 1998. And it shows the watery route of the wiggle, in which the names of the streets are written in this scene. And the scene is lined with colorful and grand Victorian houses that you pass while you're riding it. If you're unfamiliar with the wiggle tonight, and you're maybe not from San Francisco, it stretches from Duboce in the east to the Panhandle in the west. It's kind of your route to Golden Gate Park, snaking along Steiner, Waller, Pierce, Haight, Scott, and Fell Streets.
We should give Joel Pomerantz a shout out for having given it the name back in the 1980s, when a lot of us were cycling around town and wondering, how come we're treated like such second-class citizens in this city? And that's what gave rise to critical mass, which you see portrayed there, both in the mural, the bikeway mural on Duboce Street, but also in that photograph of Lombard Street on the right there. And critical mass gets its beginnings in San Francisco in 1992. It's a group of us, about maybe 20 or 30 people, who organized it and sort of had what we call an organized coincidence. And people would just show up at the foot of Market Street on the last Friday of every month, starting in September of '92. And we started with about 50 people, and it grew to thousands and thousands in San Francisco and spread by word of mouth even before the internet. I mean, the World Wide Web, for those of you who don't remember, wasn't really part of our life in 1992 yet. We might have had email, but we weren't not on the web. And soon after that, it started to appear. And not too long after that is when the word started to go very far and wide, first by regular snail mail and phone calls and just regular old communication that people had forever. And then finally on the web. And now over 300 or 400 cities around the world have critical masses. In fact, it's really big, especially in South America. And since 2011, there's been a World Bike Forum. And this year is the 10th anniversary of the beginning of that. And it's actually this February 25th, next Friday night. The cyclists of Argentina, who are very well organized because they're hosting the next World Bike Forum in Rosario this September, are calling for a worldwide critical mass to commemorate the 10th anniversary of when a banker drove his car at full speed through 200 cyclists in Porto Alegre, Brazil. Fortunately, didn't kill anybody, but he caused a lot of broken bones and a lot of damage and went more or less unpunished.
Next slide, please. And you are safe from that kind of experience when you are walking the staircases of our city. Who's climbed the Harry stairs or the Vulcan steps, which you see on the left? Or who's enjoyed the amazing gardens along the Filbert steps, or which is in North Beach, where the parrots really have their residency? I mean, did you see the parrots on the animal can earlier? Aydah Balinsky's Stairway Walks in San Francisco, The Joy of Urban Exploring, remains one of the best guidebooks to finding your way to the lost and obscure paths that crisscross San Francisco's hills. And during the pandemic is the perfect time to follow your nose to the nearest hill.
And as you walk up various streets, you will eventually encounter dead ends that sprout surprising and often hidden stairways and paths that lead you to places where ghost streets are on the map. It's one of my favorite things is exploring the hilltops and ghost streets all over the city. But the actual terrain where these places are often today a neighborhood maintained garden, often with a beautiful stairway running through it. And curiously, a number of these, not all of them, but a number of them were built during the 30s, during the Depression by the WPA, the Works Project Administration. So it's one of those great aspects of our built infrastructure that we don't realize was funded by public money, by public work, and it's high time we get on with the same project again, obviously. And give a look, if you're on the Montezuma Stairway on Bernal Heights, there's a nice plaque established there in 1940, commemorating the fact that it was built by the WPA. And now you're cool.
Now you know the cool stuff.
Thank you. That's so amazing that you were there for the beginning of Critical Mass. What's happening with Critical Mass in San Francisco during COVID? I don't know if you mentioned that.
It goes on. It's a little bit of a zombie ride these days. It has been a very small ride for a number of years. After the 20th anniversary in 2012, it diminished rapidly. And my quick take on it is that, you know, I'm a daily cyclist, so is Lisa Ruth, so is David Gallagher, so are a lot of people. But what's happened is that so many people are on their bikes every single day that the idea of doing something particular and political because you're a cyclist became slightly, maybe obsolete would be the best way to put it, because it's the same way you wouldn't say that you're a hammerist because you use a hammer, or a microwavist because you use a microwave. You don't really go around saying I'm a bicyclist because you use a bicycle. It's just a device. It gets you from here to there. That's great. It's a common choice now. It was not a common choice once upon a time, but critical mass was really meant to highlight the fact that those of us making a simple and convenient choice that made our lives better and improved the lives of everyone around us as well, were nevertheless being grossly mistreated on the streets of the city. We're a little less mistreated today. The infrastructure has considerably improved over the years. There was no bike lanes at all when we started. There's lots of them now. But what we really need is to convert, you know, a good 10% of the city's streets to bikes and pedestrians only, if not more, but at least minimally 10%. And meanwhile, let's dig up one lane for food while we're at it on a bunch of these streets and start really promoting urban agriculture. So critical mass has lost its vision over the years. It doesn't have a strong political point or voice anymore. And if it did, it would still be alive and vibrant. So it's still going. If you want to go, there's always at least a crowd of a few dozen people that meet at the foot of Market Street on the last Friday of every month at 6 o'clock for a ride. So head on out.
Chris, somebody just mentioned that you should be running for mayor. I just want to point that out in the chat. Thank you for that.
Not gonna happen.
I'd vote for you, Chris.
Okay, that's it. I'm in.
I'm almost feeling like a bike ride right now, but I'm also really warm and cozy at home. We're gonna take a short break from the hop mania that we've been in and go for something a bit softer, a little bit sweeter even with yeah.
Do you think maybe we should, before we jump into Westfalia, do you think we should maybe pause for a little Q&A since we're ahead of schedule?
Sure, yeah.
Throwing it out there. I mean, people had questions for Chris. Any more questions for Chris? Any questions for the rest of us before we keep chugging through the history here? Bathroom break.
Bathroom
Yes,
break.
bathroom.
Just in case you're not paying attention to the chat, because it's kind of going by fast and furiously. Somebody asked about the name of the book that we mentioned about the Stairways of San Francisco by Aydah Balinsky. So it's there in the chat if you want to write it down.
Well done with the assist, Chelsea Sellen. Yeah, I saw that dropped in. No questions. Okay, everybody, 5-minute bathroom break, you know, like grab a snack. No, what he says, no, let's keep
We
going.
don't need 5 minutes.
No, you never know what people get up to in the bathroom.
I'd like to say
Oh.
thank you to Chris and Lisa Ruth for making everybody forget about my Sutra Tower presentation. Appreciate it.
Okay, 3-minute bathroom break. That seems to be the consensus of how long people should spend in the bathroom. See the group effort. All right, I don't see any actual. Someone said more David.
Somebody still
I
has-
see a question about Fort Point. Our Presidio Brewery is actually a production brewery only, so it's not open to the public. And it hasn't been open to the public since we started. It's a factory first and foremost, but if you did want to visit us after we reopen, which should be in a few weeks, hopefully, we have a location in the Ferry Building on Valencia Street and Lower Haight, as well as Rock Ridge and Mill Valley. Ooh, somebody said, we have Sutro Towers. It's iconic. Wasn't television itself invented in San Francisco? Is there somebody who knows?
Yes.
It was.
Philo
Oh.
T. Farnsworth.
And the building's still there at the foot of Telegraph Hill.
And there's a statue in the Presidio in the Letterman Digital Art Center. You can go visit him.
So like many things, San Francisco is to blame for the world's ills.
John, you're gonna have to forgive me. I've been really wanting to ask you this, but it was too embarrassing. But now that I've had some beers, I feel better. When we were doing research about Cool, we were thinking about putting like things that were invented in San Francisco on it, and a jukebox came up and television, and then a martini came up.
Yeah.
And I want to know, are you related to the martini that came up with martinis?
No, I come from a long line of delicatessen owners. There's variations on the origin, but the one that I go with is that it was mixed up because somebody mixed up at a local bar and named after the town of Martinez. Somebody was en route to the town of Martinez and asked the bartender to mix them up something cool with gin, and they came up with this concoction, threw an olive in it, and they called it the Martinez. And it probably because of the vermouth martini, it became called the Martini.
That makes sense.
Myth
Did I-
busted here.
Did I shatter anybody else's myths there? Ruin their dreams, Woody?
Dina, we have
Sure
some
does.
beer can questions.
Yeah.
Folks want you to talk about the can design, how it works, and how the art design came together.
Yeah, sure. So it really depends on the can in particular, but no matter the can, the first thing we start with is we come up with a name for the beer, and obviously we know the beer style. So that's important. And then it needs to be connected to San Francisco, no matter what. So I kind of talked about how Animal came to be. Like, we knew that we wanted this really aggressive name for this bold IPA, and then we needed to find an animal connected to San Francisco, and that's how the parrots came up. But yeah, I don't know. Does that answer it?
Oh,
Somebody
no.
else.
And we work with a studio called Manual, and Tanner, who's I called out a little earlier, is one of our designers there. Manzanita Beer, why the design? Manzanita Beer, we're not really tasting it today, but that's our seasonal beer, and it's smoked. And it actually is brewed with actual Manzanita logs that we throw in while they're burning. So it's got this very like campfire camping theme. And you see the California North Coast on the can, as well as cabins that we modeled after Steep Ravine, because that's kind of a really magical place to go camping in the Bay.
Hey, somebody had a question if they could go out after COVID with all of us and walk around town with beer in hand and see all the sights. And I just want to plug our Beer, Dunes, and Trains walking tour that goes through Soma and talks about why breweries set up in that part of town. Hint, hint, water under the surface. And also, we're still running Shaping San Francisco's walking tours during the pandemic at limited capacity. So check us out.
I just want to plug that I like to walk and drink beer. So if people want to take me, I'm willing to go.
Do you have a paper bag with it? What do you when you do that?
Bring your own paper bag. Yeah, that's
All
my
right.
motto.
And I'll plug that W&P does pub crawls every year when things are normal. So as soon as businesses reopen to a bunch of crazy history nerds wandering in at very odd times during the afternoon, we'll be doing that again.
And I just want to say that the Shaping SF walking tours are fantastic. They're great. And if you haven't been on one, you should definitely take them up on it when you feel safe to do so.
Yes.
I don't.
Well, right now, all of our participants have been super great about being distanced and wearing masks, double masks, and some people coming on bikes so they can, zip around quickly and after and before. So definitely, it's a safe proposition at this point because people are making it so.
I also want to say, this is a history night and a beer night, and San Francisco has a long history of having brewers in the city. Mm-hmm. So Fort Point is continuing a very rich San Francisco tradition. And so it's great that you're here in the city, continuing it.
Thanks, Woody. Yeah.
You mentioned in passing that you're one of the few breweries in a national park. Are there others?
You know what? I thought we were the only ones. And then our head brewer, Mike Schneebeck, literally this week sent me an article about another one. It's in another part of the country, a different state. I don't remember quite which one, but there is one other brewery in a national park. So I can no longer say that we're completely unique in that regard. But
is it Michelob?
Yes.
It is Michelob.
I don't know. Maybe somebody in the audience knows about the other one. Anchor's not in a national park, sadly. But yeah, we still feel pretty special. We're definitely the only brewery that gets to look at the Golden Gate Bridge while we're brewing. Nicole, are you telling me to move on?
I was trying to give it a little dancing vibe, but yes.
Okay, yeah, Mike Schneebeck, our head brewer, just let me know it's Hot Springs National Park in Arkansas.
The very first.
John, you would know.
Yeah, it's the very first hunk of real estate set aside by Congress to, they didn't call it a park, but they wanted to protect the natural resources of the hot springs. It's like the great great granddaddy, even beats Yellowstone.
Cool fact. You can learn more than just San Francisco here. Somebody, I'm getting a couple of questions about resonance, so I'm gonna bring it up. Is it ever coming back? We believe it's coming back, but I don't have a date. Resonance is typically our spring seasonal, and it's a saison. And the name is Resonance because our brewer kind of sees it as it's two different fermentations blended together, and they work together perfectly. They resonate. And then for the graphic, we actually have a foghorn. And it's really interesting because most people do not know what a foghorn looks like. We didn't know what a foghorn looked like until we decided to put it on the can. But it's a good one. It's a bright yellow can and it will be back, TBD. Follow us on Instagram if you want to know when.
My wife is enjoying a Westfalia right now.
Ah.
Can you still carry that?
Yeah, I noticed somebody called it the Coca-Cola of beers, which is a pretty grand compliment, I gotta say. As a non-soda drinker, I still have to get my Coca-Cola in every once in a while. So just pop this open. Hello. Cheers.
Cheers.
What do you think?
Delicious. I like them a little meatier usually, but it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fancy.
Very soft. This is a beer that it's a red ale, and it's modeled after a beer that our head brewer Mike had during a road trip through Germany in the city of Nuremberg. And it's actually really true to style and has a little bit of a cult following. It's really exciting. Every once in a while we get tourists from Germany at one of our tap rooms, and they have this beer and they're just so psyched because it's very authentic. If you love this beer, you really love it. And the illustration on the can is a bit of an homage to Mike's road trip through Germany, which he took in a Westfalia van, hence the name. So, you know, we're a San Francisco brewery. We plucked that van from Germany onto a California landscape, the SF coast, the beach with the sun setting. And there are a couple of beaches in SF, and our city has a really unique beach culture. Nicole, what do you know about it?
I know so much about it, Dina, and my cat is thrilled to join us for this segment. Hope she behaves herself. So, when people think of California, they think of the California coast, right? They think of the sun and the beach, and of course, surf culture. And that's why tourists buy so many San Francisco sweatshirts, because they come here prepared for the totally wrong kind of California. And I get it, because despite the San Francisco vampire tan that I've been rocking for like 15 years now, I grew up as a blonde, bronzed SoCal beach bunny who spent like endless summer days watching my uncle surf. And all of them were rocking O'Neill gear, and I was wearing a totally 1990s body glove swimsuit that I wish I still had today. Maybe they'll bring it back, because everything from the 90s is coming back. And when I got here, the first time I jumped into the water on a warm day at Ocean Beach, I nearly died because it was totally cold. I was unprepared for how cold the water is here. So next slide, please. So today, of course, the O'Neill brand is synonymous with Santa Cruz, but Jack O'Neill actually got his start in San Francisco. He moved here in 1949 and studied liberal arts at San Francisco State University. So cheers to all my Gator alumni in the crowd, of which I am one of you. He opened his first surf shop in the garage of his home, which you can see here on the very left at 3518 Wawona near 46th Avenue in 1952. And this wasn't just his first surf shop. This is the first time you see the two words surf and shop are used together. And he sold boards and he sold neoprene wetsuits, which he had been prototyping to help him stay in the frigid waters of Northern California longer. Now, admittedly, there's been a long-standing feud about who actually invented the modern day wetsuit. Was it O'Neill? Was it a Berkeley physics professor named Hugh Bradner? Was it Bob Meistrel of Body Glove? And I'm not here to settle that debate, but I am here to tell you that the shop was a hit. And he upgraded to digs on Great Highway by 1962. So next slide, please. And he was successful in part because of the community at Kelly's Cove. So where is Kelly's Cove exactly, you might be thinking? It's located in the north part of Ocean Beach, tucked in near the Cliff House, which you can see in this photo, which was taken in the 1920s. And The origin of the name is a little bit murky. Stories go that it was, named for an old beach character named Old Man Kelly, possibly named Sam Kelly, who possibly died on the beach after having a heart attack in like 1938-ish.
True.
Well, that is a true thing, but we don't know that that's where the name comes from.
No.
And another theory, which is far less interesting, is that it's named for this Kelly Tires advertisement that you can see on the billboard tucked into the cliff just below the parapet at Sutra Heights. Pick your poison. Another myth, I guess, that you can pick. So next slide, please. But okay, so no matter how the stretch of beach got its name, it's the community that gave it life and gave it everlasting lore. So when Woody LaBounty was with Western Neighborhoods Project, he spearheaded an oral history project called Tales from Kelly's Cove that interviewed the people who pioneered the beach scene in San Francisco. But the scene wasn't just about surfing, it was about family. And, the kind you create, not the kind you're born into, although there were, family units on the beach. So these folks weren't the surf kids you would expect. They were blue collar people. You had garbage men and longshoremen and policemen, rec and park gardeners, seasonal brewery workers. Everybody who maybe had some downtime during the day, and some real San Francisco classic characters. And in the before times, they held reunions at the beach every year. And from the few that I know personally, they are the absolute best. They were and are thinkers and dreamers and doers. And here comes my cat. On the left, if you go to the next slide. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. Go to the previous slide. I moved too soon. I'm sorry. On the left, that's Frank Lewis, Waldo Resink, who was a cop, and Frank Groover around 1950. And that's a board that they made out of balsa wood salvaged from boats the Navy sold after the war. Okay, now next slide. I'm sorry, she's just here now. So there was a wall gang that didn't really surf or swim, and they were kind of up on the paved part. And then there was the beach crew that did get in the water. And these are two group portraits from the pit, which was the bonfire that folks kept burning to warm them when they came out of the water. A fire that was appropriately made from tires sometimes. And on the right, you can see the fire surrounded by kids around 1965. This was the ritual, getting wet and cold and then hanging out. You had like young kids talking about philosophy and communism. I mean, it's the Cold War era, and also communing with nature. And this really is the intersection of like urban beatnik intellectualism with the more natural summer of love ethos that we like to attribute to San Francisco. So on the left, you have some legendary Kelly's Covers, including Jim Gallagher, who bought one of the first surfboards O'Neill ever manufactured, and Pat Canine, who always has an awesome story to tell when he stops by our office, and recently co-authored a book about the South End Rowing Club. But holding it down in the middle is my very, very favorite, a woman named Carol Schultz. So next slide, please. So Carol was known as the Queen of the Beach. She was a legendary Sunset District resident and San Francisco native. And as a youngin', she played the piano at the Hungry Eye, which Woody mentioned earlier. And she hung out with the beatnik kings, Allen Ginsberg, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, who is still alive and 100 years old and owns City Lights Books in North Beach. And she also worked on a fishing boat, which is super badass for a woman of that time. It's super badass for a woman of this time. And she was a lifelong body surfer who tended the fire at Kelly's Cove and often slept out at the beach with her family. A mother figure for the community, she took care of everyone who stopped by and took in anyone who needed a home. And sadly, she passed away in December 2018, but her colorful house on La Playa, just about a block away from Java Beach Cafe, one of my favorite spots out there, is still a beacon of the neighborhood. It's bright, it has murals on the outside, it's got really lush gardens outside of it, and it's truly unique, like the woman who created it. I'm betting some of you have walked by this house and have wondered what the story was behind it. If that's true, can I get a hell yeah in the chat? No hell yes. Okay. Oh, there's a hell yeah. Okay, there's a heel yeah. Okay, great. Well, I mean, now you know if you didn't know. So maybe you're wondering where the scene is today, right? Well, when the GGNRA, the Golden Gate National Recreation Area, took over the beach and banned the fires, and then when Playland was demolished in like the 1970s, early 1970s, it kind of deflated the scene that Kelly's Cove was at that time. But the community vibe totally still exists in the outer sunset out at the beach, which just goes to show you that history reverberates into the present, even if you really don't understand the full story behind it. So I'm going to say, cheers to Westfalia. Do I have the brand right? Where is it? Cheers to Westfalia. Salute to California, and prost to the Fort Point Beer Company for letting me tell you some old beach tales tonight.
And cheers to Carol.
Double cheers to Carol.
It was awesome.
Yeah, I had no idea all that stuff about surfing too in San Francisco. I know that there's a scene, but it's so cool to know that it basically started here. Or at least that's the myth I'm sticking with.
Well, it was an early site, but it was as a cold water surf spot, it's pretty unrivaled in a lot of ways.
Check out our website. We have a podcast about Carol. We have all the transcripts from Woody's oral histories, and you can just deep dive for days all about surf culture in San Francisco.
Friends, can you believe that we're down to our last beer? Oh man. So it's our last beer of the night. It'll be our last story, but don't be sad because I actually think that we kind of saved the best beer for last. I'm gonna get this thing open. It's a dangerous one. So Dipper is a double IPA, and double means it's really big. There's lots of hops, there's lots of malt, and that means it's a really high ABV. This thing clocks in at 8.6%, which is not a joke, but you'd never know it on first sip because it really drinks like a dream.
That's a problem.
It's a little dangerous. In general, we always want to create really easy to drink beers, no matter the style. That's kind of our goal at Fort Point. So we were excited when we finally refined the recipe for this one because it's just that. And sometimes when I take a first sip, I get this strawberry milkshake flavor. I don't know if it's just me, but it just happened, and I'm going to try it again.
Now I kind of want a strawberry milkshake, to be honest.
Have a Dipper, Nicole.
That would be a bad way to end this evening, to have a strawberry milkshake.
Strawberry milkshake with the fries from one of the fast food joints dipped in.
We should stop.
Yeah, that sounds good. I love dipping my fries in a shake. But anyway, this beer, it's really fruity. It's really playful. So when we were thinking of what to illustrate on the can, we were thinking of a really fun, playful place in SF. And we kind of decided to dig a bit into the past and feature Playland at the Beach, which was an amusement park that neighbored Ocean Beach from around 1914 to 1972. Feel free to heckle me, history crew, if I got that wrong.
No, bang on.
You're on. That's good.
Cool. Big Dipper was the big anchoring roller coaster at Playland, and so it became the namesake for the beer. Of course, Playland is not there anymore, but one structure that just keeps trucking, keeps surviving, just down the road is the Cliff House, which is this ever-changing oceanside fixture that's been around for nearly 2 centuries, and then the adjacent Sutro baths. And we have an expert here tonight. John.
Hi.
Hey, what should we know? Look at this palace.
Oh, yeah. I call the Cliff House San Francisco's most self-destructive icon. It has been around since the Civil War, and in its long history, it's burned to the ground twice. It blew up once. It's been shuttered for prohibition and depression and wartime. It's had more incarnations than you can believe. And it's really, when you say San Francisco to locals, especially, and you say the beach, you go, oh yeah, Cliff House. No, that area had my wedding reception there. I had my first communion breakfast. Took mom there for Easter. And the building that we're looking at in this picture is the one that springs to a lot of people's minds of old San Francisco. That this building was misnamed the gingerbread Cliff House, because it really isn't gingerbread. It's we'll talk about it, but it's one of only several incarnations the Cliff House has had. And in my time wrapping up here, we'll talk about some of the changes that it went through over time, starting with a funky roadhouse out at the very end of San Francisco. And during the gold rush, people that were in San Francisco, they started to look for ways to get the heck out of town when they had the opportunity to do recreation. Old San Francisco during the gold rush, it was a pretty funky place to be. It was violent. There wasn't a lot of good sanitation. It was flimsy. And people that had money and time to get out of town, they'd go to the beach, which in those days meant riding a horse and wagon or a buggy miles over the sand dunes till you got to the ocean beach. What'd you do out there? You rode your horse and your buggy up and down the hard sand. It was the first time you could really open her up. And to take care of the people, take care of their drinking needs, a series of roadhouses opened up on the route out to the ocean beach and the way back. And they had names after the geographic features where they were located. There was one near Lake Merced called Lake House, and one that was located near the ocean called Ocean House. And then there was one hanging on the cliffs called the
Cliff House.
Yay! And that was the origin. It was a tavern. Its big draw was it was close to seal rocks. People could sit on the veranda, watch the seals, and they could drink. And they did it. These people were capacious drinkers and hard stuff. Beer was what you drank.
8.6 ABV, John.
You didn't trust the fresh water, so you drank beer. The Cliff House itself, it built in 1863. By the time this picture was taken a few years later, it's starting to expand, and it had a pretty seedy reputation for a while there. It's where you went to, especially the rich people with their fancy horses. You would drink, and you would there was I guess illicit gambling, and there were the infamous what they called private dining rooms, which was a little dining room with a table and a lock on the door and a couch, and you took your companion there and you had an afternoon delight. And the Cliff House by the 1880s, it was kind of down at the heels. And this guy comes along, Adolf Sutro. We already talked about him, and he's buying up San Francisco, and his house is going to be end up right on the hill overlooking the Cliff House. So he buys it about 1881, and he cleans it up. The newspaper said the first thing that he did was he changed the managers, he took the locks off the interior doors, and he got rid of all the couches. The Cliff House soldiered along, and by the 1890s, still looked pretty much like this until Christmas 1894, when poof, a fire burned it to the ground. Sutro, a man who liked to build big, he wasn't going to build any small roadhouse. This is what he created. It was the architecture really is a combination of French chateau and German Mad King Ludwig of Bavaria all run together. Adolf was German, and he brought some ideas with him. And it was built in 1896. And it lasted a grand total of 11 years before, poof, next, burned to the ground in 1907. Amazingly, this gigantic wood frame structure, there was no steel in it. This thing sat on the cliff through the 1906 earthquake, and it shook and it shimmied, but it survived, probably because it was sitting on solid rock. The fire that destroyed it, this was a long ways from nowhere. In 1907, still, this was the edge of the Pacific, and there weren't a whole lot of utilities out there. The nearest fire department was a little one-horse cart several blocks away. It burned, it went away. And even though it was very short-lived, it really stuck in people's memory. People kept saying, why don't they rebuild the Cliff House? Think if this creation had never existed and somebody had proposed building it from scratch, the controversy would just be endless. One of these landmarks is probably better in retrospect than what it was actually existing. Just clinging onto the rocks there. Sutro was gone by the time the building burned. He died in 1898, and his daughter was managing the estate, and she learned from the fire, not a good idea to keep building in wood. This is the second time it's burned down. So next slide. She went something a little bit more fireproof. Not very dramatic looking, but boy, it was built like a concrete bunker with walls about a foot thick, sitting on the rock. We've been talking about architects. The architects that designed this are the same guys that designed the Fairmont Hotel, the Reed brothers. It's very restrained. It was very simple. 3 floors of dining, and you can see it just occupies a very small area. And this is the Cliff House that, believe it or not, it still exists. Give it its date. It opened 1909, and by the 1950s, they'd been sort of the tradition out there, slapping additions onto it. It was, by the 1950s, it was clad in a very trendy redwood modern exterior. And I love this color postcard because I love the lineup of Detroit Iron. This is probably about 1951. And the Cliff House became the place where you went, as I mentioned, for Easters and Mother's Day, and in the Catholic community, christenings and first communions all took place at the Cliff House. But the Cliff House wasn't done yet. It was gonna be remodeled one more time, because one of the problems is this redwood exterior, it was susceptible to dry rot. And the Cliff House changed hands several times and was eventually owned by the National Park Service, the US government. And the tenants that were in there, they were dealing with a building that wasn't ADA accessible, and the bathrooms were downstairs. It just needed to be rebuilt. So in the early 2000s, next slide, it was taken back to its original appearance. They actually, when they started to pull off the redwood exterior, they were amazed that the real building, the 1909 building, was still there inside. They'd put an extra story onto it. They'd pushed it out, put redwood on, and the decision was made, let's take it back to the way it looked in 1909. Oh yeah, there were people that said, let's build the 1897 Cliff House, but no, that didn't happen. And the Cliff House has become sort of hot topic lately, because we're losing so many dining establishments in San Francisco. So many places are closing down. The Cliff House was closed for COVID, and this photograph here is very contemporary. And there was takeout service, but the people who've been running it for so many years just couldn't hang on any longer. There were disputes with the landlord, and the Cliff House went dark in last day of December 2020. And today, we're looking forward to a new history. Hopefully the Cliff House will come back. And as Rachel says, watch this space. Right next to the Cliff House, there's another famous landmark. Again, Adolf Sutro and his side whiskers, Sutro baths, constructed the same year as the giant frou-frou Cliff House, the French chateau thing. Sutro baths, when it was built, it was the world's largest natatorium, which is a fancy name for a swimming establishment, the world's largest indoor swimming baths. It could hold 20,000 people at a time. This picture here shows the 7 swimming pools, salt water, right out of the ocean, but heated to various temperatures. Bleachers, where people could come, and if you didn't want to swim, you could watch aquatic events. You could watch the swimmers. Next picture. And what I like to point out when I give tours out there is when Was Sutro built this in 1896, he was doing 2 things. He was building a building to show off, that, we are no hick Western town anymore. We are San Francisco. We are the, Queen City of the Pacific Coast. Look what we can build. Sutro Baths may have been the biggest building west of the Mississippi River. Maybe the Mormon Tabernacle was built a little bit bigger, but this was huge. It was Union Square could fit inside of it. And who did he build it for? These folks, blue collar folks. This wasn't a destination for the rich people. This was a streetcar destination. And he actually built a streetcar to bring people. And for 25 cents, you got into the baths where there was a museum and orchestrions and fake artwork. You also got a swimsuit, and you got a towel and a locker room. And it would draw thousands of people on a weekend. And then on a weekday, it'd be empty. And it was overbuilt. I got to look at some of the financial records, and it cost Sutro about $1 million to build. It's in 1890s dollars, and it was grossing maybe about $1,500 a month. It's going to take a long time to pay off that debt. So it kept soldiering on, it getting more and more decrepit, and they kept trying to reinvent it. At one point, next slide, in the Depression, they closed part of the swimming pools and they put an ice rink in. And this is really what kept Sutro's going up until its final closing in 1966, ice skating. It was big enough that they held hockey games in there. They had professional competitions. Ice skaters in training would use it. Teenage kids from around San Francisco who'd never, seen snow or ice in their life, they'd go strap on ice skates and go wobbling around in circles. But time was taking its toll. The place just couldn't maintain. It couldn't pay for itself. It was falling apart, and progress. It was decided to sell the baths and tear it down, and developer was going to cover the Cove with condominiums, and it shut. And in June 1966, demolition began, and then poof. 2 weeks later, the building burns, and an incredibly convenient fire. One real long afternoon in the westerly winds, and the building, which was, thank God it was empty. The museum collections had been removed. Most of the furnishings were gone. It burned to the ground, just like the 2 cliff houses. The fire department just sort of sat back. It's a modern fire department, but a 3-acre wood frame building all blazing at the same time. Sometimes best just to sit back and let her rip. When the ashes cooled, the developers were never able to pull it together to build the condominiums, thank God. And if you go to the next view, this is what was left. This is the baths as we know them today. It stayed as open space. Various developers own the land, and they were trying to turn it into variations of different condominiums and restaurants and apartment complexes. Couldn't pull the funding together. And 15 years later, the feds bought it as open space so that there would be a continuous green belt along the edge of San Francisco, which exists now, the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. And when there were hearings of what are we going to do with the ruins of the baths, a lot of people said, rebuild Sutro baths. Well, that wasn't going to happen. The place never made money to begin with. It would have cost a huge amount of money. And it was decided that the loudest voices in the crowds, when we had public meetings and testimony, people said, essentially, don't ruin the ruins. It's great down there. You can go explore. There's tunnels. You can walk around. And the Park Service essentially decided to stabilize it in place and not do any restoration, not do anything, but let people enjoy it. As one historian said, we're a very young city. We don't have a lot of ancient ruins like Rome. What we got is these 50-year-old ruins of Sutra Baz. But by God, there are ruins. And to steal a line that was used after the 1906 earthquake and fire destroyed most of San Francisco, these are the damnedest finest ruins. Ta-da!
Cheers to you, John.
Cheers.
Cheers to the wall gang that could hang out here.
That was awesome. Lots of poofs.
So many poofs. That's your new catchphrase, John.
Poof?
Poof.
I want to thank all of our panelists here tonight. This was really incredible. I want to thank everybody out there watching, asking questions. It's been really, really cool to do this with you all. And I think the consensus is that we'll have to do it again sometime.
I'm free next week.
Next week. You ready for more Dipper? Cool. Yeah. If anybody has any last questions, or if any of the panelists have any things that they want to share before we call it a night, this is the chance.
Yeah, while we're making t-shirts, we better make a poof John Martini t-shirt.
I saw a question go by quickly. Some said, why'd everything burn down out there? It was all built of wood. And there wasn't a lot of firefighting. And there's a lot of wind. Just, perfect made for...
There definitely was a lot of wind tonight.
Was there? Hot air wind. Yes.
Woody LaBounty with the late poof.
Windy out there. I live here in Marin. I don't know nothing.
John, there was a question about how they got the ice rink to freeze.
It was an ice rink with it was not a frozen swimming pool. That's a myth. What it was is ice rinks are built with a really thin sheet of water over cooling coils through which they used to circulate ammonia. Now they use something else. And when you're skating, you're only skating on a couple of inches of ice. That's how they built it. They built an elevated platform over one of the unused swimming pools and froze it.
There's a question for Lisa Ruth.
Froze a pool. No.
Lisa Ruth, someone's asking, where can I find out about your walking tours?
Right, just go to our Shaping San Francisco's website, shapingsf.org, and you can do a /tours.html if you can remember all that verbally. And you can also walk around town and see our posters around. A lot of folks are seeing us that way as everyone's getting more acquainted with their local environment, because we can't go to Venice to go see their local environment. So we got to walk around San Francisco and learn more about where we are.
I see people are asking where to get our koozies. David, do you know if we even have these on the website?
No, we don't. You just have to write to us and be nice, and maybe you'll get one on a bicycle delivery.
By the way, my dear uncle William Clark designed this, so this one's for you, Uncle Bill.
Yeah.
My cat's trying to eat my phone now. Stop it.
I'm very happy that all the comments I was writing went to the panelists and not the attendees too. So I feel pretty good about that.
It's very funny. It's very funny.
Yeah, I thought you were on a roll. I didn't know.
I was a little sharp, so it was probably good. It only went to you guys.
Well, thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Check out
folks.
outsidelands.org for our next event, which is always like this.
Thank you.
It's so hard to say goodbye.
Oh, thank you, 4 Point. Thank you, Dina and Sarah, and all the hard work put into this.
Thank you, Nicole.
This is amazing.
Hi,
All
guys.
right. Let yourselves out.
Let yourselves out.
Poof.
Playing the exit music.
Why is the first thing that comes to my mind doobie doobie doo?
Oh, somebody wanted to hear more singing. So there you go, Nicole. You just did that.
Yeah, I think it was the Dipper that did that to you.
It's weird watching the counter go down. It's like in my head, I'm seeing people walking out of the auditorium.
I think some of them are running.
Jeff said Nicole has enjoyed her beer. Jeff, this is just how I am naturally. This is how much I laugh normally. So no
It was
beer
as cool
required.
as I think we hit 104 people at the height.
No,
And it's
204. 204.
204.
204?
And it stayed there. It's like,
Yeah, towards the end, while you were talking, John, it only had gone down to 194. So we only lost 10 people.
so as soon as I started, 10 people hit the.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying at some point, 10 people had to leave.
Oh, I don't know if Chrissy Hune's still here, but John, she said that you had mentioned stabilize in place. Does that mean there are no more preservation measures in place by the Park Service for Sutro baths currently? Hard-hitting history coming at you at the end.
Okay, well, last I heard was when I was involved in the early 2000s, was that they had contract with Architectural Resources Group. And I worked with them. I wrote the history, and Architectural Resources did a study of the ruins and came up with recommendations. And I don't know where it went after that. I know that they're.
John, I always like what you say, which is the consensus from the public was don't ruin the ruins.
Yep.
Right? Keep it ruinous, because it's kind of a spot of discovery for people that way.
Yeah. However, even since the Park Service took it over, some of the walls have collapsed, and it's really badly silted in. That concrete behind where that gal's walking, you can see it spalling all over the place. It needs help. You know, there's ruin stabilization specialists. I don't think there's any budget for any of it.
Is it like up at Bodie? I mean, a little bit different because it's not concrete at Bodie, but it's like they keep it in this state of stasis, right? Where
Arrested ruins.
Every time we've tried to put up interpretive signs or safety railings, they're gone in 2 days.
Well, it really changed when they walled off the aquarium. I remember, on a dare running through there and running out along the edge of the aquarium through the little tunnel. Mm-hmm. That's dangerous. Is probably a good thing that they walled it off.
Oh my God, the catch basin out there where the waves break.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. We did a survey out there with archaeologists, and we waited until the lowest tide of the year, and we had lifeguards standing by and everything else because it was built to catch waves as they break in. And it was kind of eerie being out there because I'd looked down onto it a million times, and then you're actually standing down there, imagining the whole Pacific crashing on top of you.
I think you wouldn't lose your warning signs if you didn't design them to be so attractive. I think that's the problem. Really.
When we
design
used to drive along Great Highway, and there was like a 3rd-story apartment with a giant, warning, dangerous waves sign attached to their stolen from Ocean Beach, attached to their fire escape.
Yeah.
That's what happened with those with the Open SF History posters that we made. Some people really took to it, and they made laminated posters and put them up, and they were beautiful. And then the guy comes back another week later. He says, "Somebody stole all my posters." I said, "You made them too good."
Yeah.
Yeah. My what I'd like to see done with the baths is the area just this side of where those folks are walking. That was the original settling tank for the baths. The waves would break, the water would rush into this settling tank, and then it would be allowed to, by sluice gates, fill the pools. Well, it also had to drain out to the Pacific Ocean. I think it'd be cool as heck if someone were to dig out the settling pond, reopen the channel, and just let the waves fill it and let it drain. I mean,
hey, John, that brings up a question I have. So you got a free 6-pack of beer. What did you do with it?
I said it was for you and David.
Okay, great. Just so we're clear on that.
That was a leading question.
If you need beer, Woody, you can just ask.
I actually still have quite a bit here. I'm fine.
Hey, did you notice somebody asked? It went by real quick. They said, "We want to see your libraries."
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys have such amazing backgrounds. I have a white wall here.
I
Your first,
I
it's your
moved-
first one.
I moved all my books over to the Western Neighborhoods Project office, and now I don't go there, so I can't use any of them. But
This section is generally my Teddy Roosevelt fangirl section. So
How many Teddy Roosevelt fangirls are there?
two that I know of for sure, me and
Two.
Chelsea Sellen.
Okay, all right, good to know. Good to know. How many LBJ fangirls do you think there are?
None that I have personally met yet.
I see one. Nora Gregory.
Oh yeah, we got one.
We got a woo.
No way.
Was that woo for LBJ or for
I think it's got to be
TMR?
Roosevelt.
I think it's for LBJ.
Oh, we
FDR.
got an FDR.
Maybe our next beer talk should all be about presidential names or something.
Yeah, because people love
Yes.
talking about old white men's
Presidents.
names. Yeah,
well, there's been a lot of presidential visits to San Francisco for sure.
that's true, including Teddy Roosevelt.
Maybe it's time for dinner. So I really enjoyed this.
See two people still holding strong with us, so it must be entertaining for.
Listen,
How many people type in the chat if you want Woody to leave? Type leave. Type leave.
Poof! Poof!
No. Stay.
You can never go, Woody.
Go. You can
Dina,
never-
Wait,
Dina, I used to, one reason I hang out with WNP is I've described it as like it's a history version of the Algonquin Round Table.
Can
With
you fill me
That's-
in a bit more?
with less literacy.
That's giving some of us a lot of credit, John.
Can I be Dorothy Parker?
Incredibly
I get
educated,
to be
witty
Dorothy Parker.
people
Sorry.
exchanging bon mots over cocktails,
You're
right?
Bennett Cerf. Take that.
Look up Algonquin round table immediately.
Google's Algonquin Round Table. I mean, I always thought of us more. I remember when Drunk History first came out, I messaged Martini and I was like, hey, do you want to do this? And he was like, yes, absolutely. No hesitation. And look at this, John, like 5 years later, we got you to drink a bunch of beer and talk about history.
I really want these 49 people to like call it a night. Come on, you folks. It's like-
Hey, I have a quick question. I'm curious too, but somebody was asking John, what's this building next to the Cliff House that's kind of sunken in this photo?
It was a waffle shop.
What?
And I have no idea, what pull they had on the Sutro estate, but this, brand new concrete building goes up and there's this funky wood waffle stand nestled into it, right in its elbow.
Kind of hungry.
Waffles were a big deal. They were kind of like the, I don't know, corn dogs of the beach in the early 20th century. I mean, if you think of corn dogs today, it's kind of like greasy food you get at the beach. Well, it used to be waffles. I'm not sure why, but there were a lot of waffle stands.
Maybe more like a funnel cake, like
Yeah,
the funnel
it's more
cake
like
of today.
churro. Yeah, it's more like a churro or something.
Oh, I love this. Somebody says the Cliffle House.
Oh,
Right.
Nice one. Nice one. Sean.
Yeah.
Good job.
It was there until they widened Point Lobos Avenue and paved it.
And
And
they cut that part out, yeah.
yeah,
Right.
you see,
I love that building. I'm so in love with that building. It's the bright, it's the square, it's the boxy.
I love the California ranch house chimney that comes out the top of it.
yeah.
it didn't do anything, right?
No, it was all decoration, but it's
It
cool.
might be like a structural part of the building, maybe.
It's trying to mimic that sort of mid-century modern chimney thing. So
And
We couldn't-
you see where it says since 1858?
wrong.
Wrong.
Oh, another myth of history, people. Another myth of history.
Yeah. The guy that owned the Cliff House and Playland at the beach and later on Sutro Bass named George Whitney. You can see it says Whitney's on the fake chimney. He Yeah, he was a showman. He really didn't care about history. He would make up artifacts and put them in the windows.
Yeah.
There was a train once, right, that ran around Land's End, a little steam train. You see it in old pictures. Well, he had a locomotive on display that said Ferries and Cliff House Railroad on display in Sutro Baths. I found out later when he went to Guam, he bought a little tiny steam engine that used to run around the cane fields, brought it back to San Francisco and repainted it and pawned it off on generations of gullible kids like me.
He went to Guam. I think he went there and got it. I think somebody just like passed it off to him from Guam, right?
How does one even establish contact with Guam in the 50s that easily?
By boat.
By boat. Yes. Yes, but we didn't even get to talk about John and my favorite part of the Cliff House in the 1950s, which is the Sky Tram.
Ooh. Don't ruin it. That's next time.
And Woody, we really should have talked a little bit about the cable car, I'm blanking. Carville, yeah, and the Falcons, the Lady Falcons. I did not.
Next time. That would be
that is the next time.
That would be a great can design, actually, don't you think? I mean, that would have been better for you, Lisa Ruth. It's all, cycling and that sort of thing would have been great.
Are you saying it's very cool?
It's very cool.
We don't use that word.
But
You
also
don't use that word.
Lady Falcon Coffee already kind of like has the, angle on that.
Copyright. Everybody's like using my book to make their own brands. Anybody can do it, so it's fine.
I think the Lady Falcons predated your book. I mean,
no, Buffy got that from my book.
Yeah, she did.
Buffy totally told me she got that, and Colonel Daly's, that little sort of side thing they did, the beachside restaurant they opened, it was all from my book. So, and what I get? Satisfaction.
And what is your book, Mr. LaBounty?
It's out of print. Don't worry about it.
But we still have copies though for sale.
Can we get it at the library?
Yes. If you want to be cheap about it, you can go to the library.
David Balinsky, you put a thrift books link in there. Send it to our website. We still.
Oh, he's actually putting some other book up.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm a jerk.
There is a. Yeah, it's out of print, so wherever you get it is great. So, wait, do I have it here? Maybe I do.
Oh, look, we're getting to see the library.
John walked away.
Oh, no, John walked away to get the book.
Oh, I don't have a copy
A
over
community
here.
at Ocean
Wait, I
Beach,
do.
made of old horse carts and
David walked away to get a book.
I have a copy too, but my cat is very comfortable.
a female
not
bicycling
messing
club
with
called
this.
the Lady Falcons
Lady Falcons.
in the 1890s.
Oh, 4 point.
Yeah.
Everybody's repping their books.
Oh,
David, you're repping Woody's book. Where's your
He's
book?
repping Woody's book.
Oh, it's signed by me.
Ooh.
Valuable.
Ooh.
I brought all the books. I brought all the stuff from the online store home because I didn't want to have to go over to the office when we got an order.
I saw somebody selling my book on eBay or something for $300, and I typed in, I said, I'll give you one for 30.
eBay shade.
Or take a commission from that eBay seller.
I know, I was like, come on, dude, don't like just totally.
All right, while we're repping books, we've got the critical mass history of 300, or sorry, talking about the 300 cities, but only 30 represented in this book, only 30.
Who did that image, by the way, Lisa Ruth? I like that.
This is a Mona Carone image, the angel. She did this angel for the 10th anniversary of critical mass.
Nice.
And then she updated her for 10 years later. And then Shaping San Francisco's book about the 68 to 78 decade, 10 years that shook the city, also a great book.
Mm-hmm. And Chris's book, Chris's Hidden San Francisco book, which Chris left, rude.
Right? And my book, or that I contribute to, People's Guide to the San Francisco Bay Area. Also, there's lots of books.
So, Dina, what beers are coming that we can advise you on can design for?
Oh, yes.
You know, we actually don't release very many beers. We only have 10 cans. And we didn't release new cans until we released new cans in 2020, but before that, nothing new for 2 years. So they have a pretty long process of getting brought to life. But man, there's still 41 people listening, and I'll let the cat out of the bag. We have a new beer series coming out that's going to be in 16-ounce cans. So a bit bigger than these, and we're going to treat them in a different way. There's opportunities for more collabs and kind of experimenting with new styles. Yeah, and that's coming in a couple of months. So we should talk.
Ooh, yeah, let's do
Cargill beer.
History All-Star cans.
I really like the Woodward's Gardens suggestion that was just made. Nice one, Woodward's Gardens.
That would be cool.
By Lauren. Nice job,
Can
Lauren.
you tell me about that? I don't know if I know it.
Oh, Woodward's Gardens was an amusement park that is, there used to be a plaque, but it's gone now. But there's a little restaurant on the corner of Mission and Division.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's the restaurant is named after it, but Woodward's Gardens took that area from like 14th to Mission to
It's
up
almost
to
a block
Barrow.
and a half.
Is that place
Yeah,
now
2 blocks,
craft
14.
speaking- It's no longer called that, but I totally remember seeing
Right,
that
no longer
restaurant and
But
thinking about it.
it had a streetcar that came all the way to along Mission there and stopped there. And there was everything from, unfortunately, a dancing bear to seals to other sorts of wildlife. And then basically this Woodward was a hotel proprietor, and he had collected a bunch of things in his hotel from sailors and travelers who had come around to San Francisco from all parts of the world. And he had a sort of museum of curios there at Woodward's Gardens, and also these live animals and an aquarium, all sorts of things. Apparently there was even
sea lions. Had the first sea lions in sort of like on display. So
yeah.
And a lot of artwork, a lot of copies of European stuff. Adolf Sutro went on a buying spree when they closed Woodward's, bought a huge amount, and he moved it into what he called his museum in Sutro Baths.
what I liked was the sailing boat ride with the little kids and a little like merry-go-round that was actually water with little sailing boats. They looked like little.
Yeah, and there was, apparently they really moved by wind power. It was kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, they had multiple ponds and aquatic environments. And also it still had some of the natural topography, which was a hillside going up to where the current mint in production is now, Mint Hill and Clinton Park there. And it was a lot, it's not flat. It wasn't flat like it is today.
Yeah, they kind of raised the hills there.
You know where the old armory is, that big old grim building there? That's where it was.
Yeah, it was pretty close to that.
It covered 2 square blocks. That was part of their property.
There is a street called Woodward still. So
it's a good beer tie-in, I think, because it's the Mission District, which is kind of cool, and it had like everything in it. It was sort of like a little curiosities amusement park. It's a proto amusement park, right, with all sorts of weird things in it. So
yeah, I said all that, Woody, just so you
I know, but I said it quicker and after you.
Wow.
Somebody said columbarium stout.
Woody, that was not cool.
Wait, I haven't got to cool yet. I'm still like stuck on Westfalia.
Yeah, I'm still on Westfalia too. Oh, we've got one support for the columbarium stout. Oh,
I just think that's a hard sell, people. The columbarium.
Yeah.
I skipped to this one.
What if it
How'd
had
you get that one?
It could have a smoky taste, the columbarium stout.
We already have
That's
a
the wrong
smoke here. Oh man.
Yes, please make that raccoon Alcatraz beer. I am all for this beer.
Yeah,
Mom could totally rep that.
I am hoping somebody out there is mocking up the label right now.
I bet someone really is doing their little, illustrator job right there.
Oh, now people are just
I mean,
talking.
Wow.
The cell
Not good, not good.
It's
We're gonna shut
perfectly
this
your
down.
frame artwork.
All right, I'm gonna go have dinner.
What's for
Same.
dinner? What do people want to know?
What am I having? I was thinking Indian food. We have some kind of leftovers, so I might just heat those up.
All right.
By the way, if we're just like doing like endorsements, David Kaiju Cooks, is that the one across the street from the office?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Are
Still
they?
great takeout. I get that
Yeah,
that
they're awesome.
that soup, that pho is just so good. So I'm
Really?
gonna have that tomorrow, I think.
But they're only open on the weekend though now, right?
Oh, you're right. But tomorrow's Friday. Maybe I get it.
And
This-
I haven't been to the city in I think 6 months. Is Orson's Belly, is it gone?
Orson's-
Gone, they moved to New York.
Yeah.
But they do really awesome like cooking videos now on
Love that
Instagram.
couple.
Yeah,
They're gone.
they're gone. The city pushed them
David's
out.
like, they were too hip for David. They were kind of like,
Really? You didn't like them? They're so
They were
cool.
very friendly, but yeah.
They're really into beer too.
They are. They're really into all kinds of things. Also, they contributed to charity. Like they had their own nonprofit that like helped like at-risk youth find focus with skating and film production.
I did appreciate, the one thing I appreciate about Orson's Belly is that they showed movies on the wall, which was kind of like the old bar there that was there before My House Is Your House, that had a TV set in the fireplace. So
Yeah,
That
but that
was-
TV set never worked. They had the well, we played Pinbot there. Pinbot, the
do you remember when we went to the Silvercrest donut shop and we
April
were like, hey,
23rd.
turn on the Giants game. He had a TV and he goes, oh, okay, I'll try it. And he turns it on and it's fuzz, it's white, snow. And he's like, and we're like, channel two, okay. And every station was just fuzz. It's like the
It's
TV
open
didn't work.
24
He knew
hours.
it. He
It's
knew it, but he
Howard,
wouldn't.
you can't expect the TV to work. It's like it's like worn out. But the secret about Silvercrest Donuts is to show up. What day is it? April 23rd?
Yeah, something like that. Saint George's Day.
St. George's Day. The owner, it's his birthday.
It's his
Saint-
name day. It's his
Yeah.
Greek Orthodox name day.
So you get free shots. He just like gives
all-
everybody free shots on that
All
day.
night.
What's the
And-
address? Sorry, where do
It's
we go?
Seashore. It's Silvercrest Donuts.
Yeah.
Now 40 people know this. It's going to be packed.
Yeah, exactly. They're gonna get overrun.
St. George's Day. It's an important day in Greek Orthodox.
It's
so,
a dangerous time to go to the Silvercrest Donuts.
yeah, that's the time to ride your bike because you will drink so much ouzo. I mean, it's free shots, but it's free shots of ouzo, so it's like
Hey, Dina, I think you got a winner. You got people wanting you to do the same format when you release a new brew, and you can.
I'm down. Can you guys imagine another time when we could all do this in a theater and how awesome that'll be?
Like the Balboa Theater.
Like the Balboa Theater,
Or the Roxy.
the Roxy. I was even gonna say the Castro.
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh,
Aiming
the
high.
Castro.
Yeah, we
That's
can
really
do
high
it.
We still get beer, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I mean, you have to
Oh.
drink the beer.
I know the Balboa was trying to serve beer. Maybe they do serve beer now. I don't know.
They do serve
They do.
beer. They do serve beer.
So
Do they have
That might
4
be
points
something.
though?
Good question.
that's up to you. That's up to
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Oh.
You're right. You're right. You're right.
You know, we'll have to go head to head with Lost Landscapes if we do Castro Theater. We'll see if we can sell out the Castro like Lost Landscapes can.
I think
Yeah,
beer wins.
Totally.
I think if
Did
we
did
have
any of
beer-
you go to the drive-in version of that?
No,
No,
but
it
it
was-
sounds fun.
Wasn't it tonight?
I think
It
it was
might be.
like a week or two ago.
We're
I
gonna
feel like
Whatever it was.
We're
have
we're
our
not
gala
doing.
at the drive-in, and we were thinking of having Rick, but with Lost Landscapes, but maybe now we won't. So
Womp
We're not
womp.
doing. We're
the
not doing a
drive-in-
good
is that
job
the
of
one-
driving the people out.
I know, people just want to stay and listen.
Oh, hey Dina, now that I think about it, since San Francisco Heritage is gonna have its gala at the drive-in, maybe we should have some sort of Fort Point connection since
let's
you're
talk
so
about
close.
it.
You're
Oh
right
my
down the road
God.
from us. You're right down the road from there.
Yeah, we are.
All right, well, we'll talk. We'll talk.
Yeah.
Are you also going to bring your history friends with you?
Tickets are very
We're up
expensive.
for it.
people like
We're
you.
up for it.
What? Wait. I mean, I wouldn't bring me after my performance tonight, to be honest. But John Martini,
John Martini?
he's a star.
As long as he goes last again.
Wait, David, you have a fan. You have a fan.
It says no more, David. There were definitely factions that supported each individual historian on this call.
Really? People supported David? They actually did, huh?
Yeah, there were David fans. There were Woody
People
fans.
people like pictures. They don't like the talking stuff. Pictures. Show me more pictures.
I think
just
that
read
David
4-point
David Love is ironic, I think. I think it's ironic, David Love.
No,
Somebody said
David
you have a nice voice.
Wait, Dina, is it true that like several of your staff and leadership have history degrees?
It's true.
Oh my God, we're the same people.
It's a fact. Show yourselves, anyone? I know our head brewer studied history, Mike Schneebeck.
Yes.
A lot of people say David sounds a little like Winnie the Pooh. Anybody else think that?
Who said that? That was a comment that we got on the podcast like a million years ago. Yes, I'm related to Sterling Holloway.
I always thought you were more of an Eeyore, but that's just me.
Yeah, well, in kind of the manner, but maybe not voice. So we got Felicia and Kimberly with history
Yeah.
degrees.
Felicia's our director of people and our chief of staff.
Nice. Director of
And
people.
you're like if Pooh and Eeyore had a baby.
Oh my God.
What?
Sorry.
Oh,
Read the
sorry. You're reading the comments. Sorry, that was about David. Got it. Rafi.
Nailed it. Nailed it.
So our head brewer, a director of people, and our director of finance, all historians.
Wow.
Underneath.
That finance part has me worried.
Yeah, historians cannot do math. We talk about this all the time.
Yeah, that sounds wrong to me.
Yourself. Speak for yourself.
I'm not a historian, so
All right, I'm gonna go have dinner.
For
I've
the
heard that. Poof.
This time for real.
Poof. This time for sure.
Wait, there were questions.
Bullwinkle.
Well, all 40 of you left in attendance, come to our live podcast recording tomorrow night. If you like this vibe, you're going to be super down for the podcast vibe. We're talking about Clement Street businesses. It's totally free. You don't have to be a member. You get extra behind the scenes footage. Oh no, you do have to be a member. I screwed that
And
up.
you
I won't be there.
left over, so you know.
I'm gonna go too.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. This was really awesome.
Good
Good
night,
night,
all.
everyone.
Thanks, Sarah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you
Bye.
so much.
Bye.
37 hanger honors.